Rearranging equations. So we call y equals mx plus b the slope y-intercept form because you can read the slope m and the y-intercept easily by looking at the equation of the line. So the m is your slope, the b is your y-intercept. Standard form of a linear relationship is ax plus by plus c equals 0. It's derived from the y equals mx plus b equation by moving all of the terms to one side of the equation and then setting that equal to 0. A, b, and c are just numbers, just like m and b are in y equals mx plus b. So you'll have a number in for your a, your b, and your c. So for example, this might be 3x plus 2y plus 4 equals 0. So there are 3 steps to follow when converting equations to standard form. So a, the number in front of x must be a positive number. So if it ends up being negative, you can multiply every term by -1 to get rid of that positive value or that negative value. One side of the equation must be equal to 0, and we usually make the left or the right-hand side of the equation 0 and the left-hand side of the equation your variables. And the equation must not have any fractions or decimals in its final form. So if you do end up having a fraction, you want to multiply every term by the denominator to get rid of that fraction. So let's go through some examples. So we're going to change the equations into standard form. So when you're doing that, you have to ask yourself some questions. So once you've turned it into standard form, ask yourself, is A positive? If it is, leave it where it is. If it isn't, then you can either move everything to the opposite side of the equation, and if it's at that stage, that you can move all the terms to the same side where the AX term is positive. So right now, we'll look at your A value here. So the A value is a number in front of your X. So this is a positive value. So I want to keep my 2x on the right-hand side. So I'm going to move the y to the right-hand side so that my 0 is on the left-hand side. And that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to keep my 2x here. So I'm going to move every term to the right-hand side. So in order to do that, I have to subtract y from both sides to get rid of it from the left-hand side. So I can write it like this, y minus y equals 2x. And because we like to go in the order of ax plus by plus c, I'm going to put in my negative y right after my x and then my subtract 4. So y take away y is 0. That's what I want. So I'm left with 2x minus y minus 4. I can't simplify these because these are all different terms. None of these are like terms, so this would be my equation. If it's easier for you to rewrite it as now at this point, 2x minus y minus 4 equals 0, you can do that, or you can keep it like this. So either one of these versions of the equation I will accept. Okay. Next one. Here's my 3x. This is my A term. Right now my 3 is a positive value, so I'm going to keep my 3x on the right-hand side. I'm going to move my y to the other side. So this might be a good strategy for you to do as well, so to think about that. So I'm going to subtract y from my right-hand side, so I can do it like I did here, or you can think about it as moving my y to the other side and subtracting. So I'm left with 0 and then 3x minus y plus 7. So that's an option as well. And I can keep my equation like this. I don't need to rewrite it like this, like I did for part 1. You can keep it like this. That's fine. Okay? If it makes your little heart happier to rewrite it so that this is now at the front of your equation, by all means, go ahead and do that. All right, for part 3, example 3, my x is negative. So now I want to move this to the other side. So all of these terms have to be moved over here. So what does that look like? Well, I can keep my y here at front, And then when I'm moving my negative 8x to the other side, it becomes positive. And when I'm moving my positive 2 to the other side, it becomes negative. And that is going to equal to 0 because I have nothing left on the right-hand side. And I can rearrange this so that my x term is first. So I have 8x plus y, take away 2, is equal to 0. So remember, when you are solving equations, we can move over the signs or the terms to the other side of the equal sign. And when I do that, I am changing the sign, so the opposite operations, just like when you were solving equations. But if it's helpful for you to show the step as we did in example 1, by all means go ahead and do that. So now let's take a look at example 4. All right, so I have 1/2 x, so it's already positive, so I want to keep this term here, and I'm going to move my y to the other side. So I'm going to have 0 on my left-hand side, and I'm going to have 1/2 x. I can move my y. When I move it over here, I can put it in the middle where it needs to be. So when it's positive on this side, it becomes negative on that side, and then take away 3. So this is an example where our a term is a fraction. We don't want that to be a fraction, so this is where we need to multiply all terms by the denominator. And when I say all terms, I mean all terms. So we're multiplying that 0 by 2, we're multiplying the 1/2 x by 2, we're multiplying the 2 by the y by 2, negative, we are multiplying our 3 by 2, everything, okay? You'll notice that I kept my signs here, so if they're negative, I'm going to keep that negative sign, separating those for now. So 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 1/2 is 1. So 1x, or 2 divided by 2. I have my negative 2y, and negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. So you can keep your answer like this, or you can rewrite it so there's no 1 in front of your x. So you can have it like this. Or you can write it so that your terms are on the left-hand side and your 0 is on the left-hand side. Either of these answers I will accept. All right, and last example for this part is example 5. So I have a negative 2 over 3x, so I want to move this to the right-hand or left-hand side so that it becomes negative. So I'm going to move everything over to the left-hand side. So I'm going to start with my y, and then I have my plus 2/3 x, and now this will be a negative 7, and that's going to equal to 0 because there's nothing left now on this right-hand side. So I have to multiply every term by my denominator. So I have to multiply every term by 3 in this case. So I have 3y. Just going to draw a line here so you can see. 3y plus 3 times 2 over 3x. And then if you want to do a plus 3 and then negative 7, you can do that as well. Or you could do it like we did here in example 4. So both of these would be okay. I'm showing you multiple ways that you know that whatever way you do it is not necessarily wrong as long as you're getting the correct answer. All right, so let's simplify this. I have 3y. My 3 on the numerator and the denominator cancel each other out, so we're left with 2x. And positive 3 times negative 7 is negative 21, and that is equal to 0. And I want to rewrite it so that my x term is first. So I have 2x plus 3y, take away 21, is equal to 0. So rearranging an equation from slope-intercept form into standard form is just like we would have done when we were solving equations. So we're just moving everything from one side or two sides to the one side. So now that we've done that, we can also go the other direction. So we can change equations from standard form into slope-intercept form. And the way that we do that is we want to isolate y by itself. So we're going to keep y here, and everything else needs to be moved over. All right. So when we're doing that, you also have to make sure that y is positive and that there's no coefficient in front of 1. So there's no number in front of your y. And we'll look through some of those examples as we continue. So I'm going to keep my y on the left-hand side. I'm going to move my positive 5x over. So I'm adding it on the left-hand side. So I'm going to subtract it from the right-hand side. So if you want to keep your 0 here, you can, and then subtract 5x. And then I'm subtracting negative 8 from the left-hand side. So I'm adding 8 to the right-hand side. And you can rewrite this so that you no longer have that 0 term. So y equals negative 5x plus 8. So you can keep the 0 if that's helpful for you, or you can eliminate the 0 right away. So we'll do that for the next example. So I'm keeping my y where it is. So my negative 2y term is going to be there. Everything else I'm going to move to the other side. So I have negative 2y is equal to, if it's 4x is being added to the left-hand side, I need to subtract it from the right-hand side. And if 6 is being added to the left-hand side, I need to subtract it from the right-hand side. So I have negative 2y is equal to negative 4x, take away 6. Now remember, the coefficient in front of your y must be 1. So if there happens to be a number in front of your y term, then divide every term by the coefficient in front of y. So you can rewrite this equation showing that you're dividing, and this time we're going to divide by whatever sign is in front as well. So we're dividing every term by negative 2. So negative 2 divided by negative 2 is positive 1, so we're left with 1. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is 2x, and negative 6 divided by negative 2 is positive 3. So this would be an example of converting the equation from standard form into slope-intercept form. Let's go through a couple more examples. Negative 3x, take away 6y plus 12. I'm keeping my negative 6y on the left-hand side. Everything else is moved over to the left-hand or right-hand side. So negative 6y is equal to positive 3x, because I'm subtracting it from the left-hand side, I'm adding it to the right-hand side. And positive 12 becomes a negative 12. And now I'm going to divide every term by the coefficient in front of my y. So I'm going to divide every term by negative 6. So negative 6 divided by negative 6 is 1y, so just y. 3 divided by negative 6 will simplify to negative half x, negative 1 over 2x, right? Because I simplify that fraction. And negative 12 divided by 6 is positive 2. 2 negatives turn into a positive. And I can keep it as a fraction here. Some people might write this as y equals negative x over 2 plus 2. I prefer this version. That's my own personal preference. Because it's easier when it's written like this to identify your slope. So the last example we're going to look at is x plus 3y plus 9 equals 0. Same thing, we're going to keep our y term on the left-hand side, move everything else to the right-hand side using opposite operations. So 3y is equal to negative x. Those positives become negatives, and then negative 9. And then we're going to divide each term by the coefficient in front of your y, which is your positive 3. So that 3 divided by 3 gives us y, or 1y. And then this becomes negative 1 over 3x. And then negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3. So I hope that helps you convert from standard form to slope-intercept form and vice versa.